Hello, happy Sunday and welcome to a new reading vlog. My name is Jen. I'm an author and a book reviewer and I've been making videos on this channel for over 10 years and I put the blinds down when I started filming this video because the sun was streaming in, and obviously as soon as I started filming the sun disappeared, which is very rude, but never mind. This is going to be a short intro clip to the vlog because you all seem to enjoy my last reading vlog, which was basically a vlog stitched together with lots of different little segments where I took you book shopping, I talked to you about what I was reading, what I had been reading, what I'd bought, any review copies that arrived in the post, and I also answered your bookish questions. If you're new, I have a daughter, she's nearly 2, I look after her full time and I work freelance when she is sleeping. So things are a lot, well, not chaotic, just busy. It's very, very busy. So filming videos in this way is working for me at the moment instead of a long sit down video. And many of you said it was helpful for you because it meant it was easier for you to watch it in chunks instead of watching a really long video in one go. So that's what this video is going to be. I am going to try and get to Foyles during her nap time today. In the last video, we went to 2 new independent bookshops and I'm just itching to get to Foyles because I haven't been there in 3 years, I think, which is outrageous. It is, after all, the mothership. So when my daughter goes down for a nap today, I'm gonna nip to Foyles. My husband will obviously be in the house. I'm not leaving her on her own. That would be concerning. So we are gonna go down to Foyles. I don't know what I'm looking for. I just wanna see, to be honest, what their staff recommendations are because those are always pretty good. Also in this video, I'm going to be answering, as before, some of your bookish questions, and I think the International Booker Prize longlist will be announced as I'm filming this, not today, but in a couple of days. So maybe we can look at that long list and I can talk about my reading plans with regard to that as well. So before we nip off to the bookshop, let me answer a couple of your questions. One of the questions you asked was, were there any books that I read last year that I didn't get around to talking about or just didn't want to talk about? I'm sure there are because I didn't do reading wrap-ups last year, but there are only 2 books that are springing to mind. And I think the reason that I'm remembering these books is because they're books by authors whose work I generally do love. I just didn't end up gelling with these ones, and it might be due to time and place. I may revisit them in the future. In fact, if they happen to be on the Women's Prize long list this year, which we will find out in a couple of weeks, then I will revisit them. But those are Ripeness by Sarah Moss. I was shocked that I didn't get on with this one because some people say they think it's her best book. And I've loved everything of hers that I've read before. So that was strange to me. So maybe I need to go back and read that at some point. And the other one was Helm by Sarah Hall. And admittedly, I have had a bit of a hit and miss relationship with her books in the past. My favourite book by her is Wolf Border, which I read quite a long time ago now, but this is told from the point of view of a wind and it's following many centuries and it is about climate crisis. It reminded me a lot, even though the subject matter is different, but just the way it's framed, it reminded me of Mrs. Death by Selena Godin, which is a book narrated by Death, who is a working class black woman who's been around for all of time, and she's commenting on how ridiculous humans are. And this is kind of what Helm is doing too, but from the point of view of a wind. And I kept on making a comparison between those 2 books, and I really enjoyed Selena Godin's book, and it just lessened my enjoyment of Helm. But if the situation arises where I'm reading a prize list and it happens to be on it, then I'll go back to it. We shall see. So those are the books that I can remember not talking about much last year. As for what I'm currently reading, I've opened the blinds again, but I fear that's just made the lighting worse. Anyway, we move. Different vibes. I'm reading this, which is What Happened That Night by Nikki French. Firstly, I am slightly perplexed by this title because it's the 3rd in a series, and so far each book has had the name of a character in the title. So what happened to... No, has anyone seen Charlotte Salter? And what was the previous one? The other one was The Last Days of Kira Mullen. And this one, when I received the proof of it, was called Tyler Green Will Never Be Free. But it has been renamed to What Happened That Night, which doesn't feel like it fits in with the series. An interesting choice. Anyway, I am not sold on this one yet. And you know that I adore Nikki French. I have read every single one of their books. I have made a video before where I have talked about each title, and for the most part I've loved their work. There were some books that I didn't care for. I absolutely adored their last series, which was the Frida Klein series, which you know because I've talked about it a lot. This is their first series since that one, and in each of the books we follow characters that are involved in some kind of crime in the first half, and then in the second half we follow Maud O'Connor, who is a detective who is trying to solve these crimes. So I've just started reading it, and we've got lots of different characters. Tyler Green has just been released from prison after nearly 30 years, having been accused of murdering one of his friends, and all of the friends who were present the night that that friend was murdered are coming back together, including Tyler. I think someone else is probably going to die. I think the issue I have at the moment is just there are so many characters and it's taking me a while to remember who everybody is, but that's all, you know, part of reading a crime book which has lots of characters. And the plus of having lots of characters is that there are lots of lines of inquiry and lots of people to be suspicious of. So I'll probably end up really enjoying it, but I'm in the I am working hard on this novel stage, trying to get to grips with who everyone is, what's going on, and it's also a split time period as well. So that's what I'm reading at the moment. I'm actually listening to that one, so I'm going to continue listening to that as we head to the bookshop. So yes, please do come with me on this bookish journey, and hopefully the next clip will have better lighting. Let's go. It's now nap time the following day. This morning we went out because it's going to absolutely tip it down with rain this afternoon. So we went out for a very full morning this morning, looking at all the beautiful crocuses and daffodils. And it was very joyous, and we listened for woodpeckers and had a lovely time. I also had a lovely time in Foyles yesterday, and I bought 2 books, but I had my eye on a couple of others as well, which you will have seen in the B-roll that you just watched. So I'm going to look up these books now and let's have a little chat about them, because I ummed and ahed about it. Maybe there'll be books I'll pick up another time, I'm not sure, and I'll show you the 2 that I did buy. I also signed some of my books when I was there because they were sitting on the shelves. So if you go to Foyles in the near future, you can find signed copies of The Beginning of the World in the Middle of the Night, the Girl Aquarium, and Please Do Not Touch This Exhibit. I didn't have time to go to the children's section, so I just signed adult fiction. I didn't make it to non-fiction either. I was just in the poetry section and then the fiction section, but it's always nice to see books on the shelves, especially poetry and short stories. So the books that I purchased, let's start there. I got this one, okay, which is A Year in the New Life by Jack Underwood. Now, I've already bought this book. I pre-ordered it on Blackwell's. Can I find this book anywhere in the house? No. Am I sure it even arrived? I don't know. Maybe I should actually search through previous book hauls and see if I hauled it, because if I hauled it, then it obviously definitely arrived. But I haven't read it, and it is not anywhere on my shelves. Obviously it's very small, so I guess it could have fallen down somewhere. Now that I've bought it again, I'm obviously going to find it, right? I'm going to discover it tomorrow. And if that happens, I will gift this copy to somebody else. But I've been itching to read it recently. This is Jack Underwood writing about his first year of being a parent, I think. And I really do enjoy his poetry. So I might read this in this vlog actually, and I'll talk about it. And then the other one I picked up is one I'd never heard of before, which is A Perfect Day to Be Alone by Nene Oyama. And it is translated from the Japanese by Jessie Kirkwood. It says, "It was raining when I arrived at the house. The walls of my room were lined with cat photos set in fancy frames just below the ceiling. I didn't feel like counting them. Some were black and white and others colour. The whole room had the austere atmosphere of a family altar. I just stood there in the doorway." And on the inside flap it says, "When her mother emigrates to China for work, 20-year-old Shizu moves in with Ginkgo, an eccentric distant relative, taking a room in a ramshackle Tokyo home with its 2 resident cats and the persistent rattle of passing trains. As the 4 seasons pass, Shizu navigates a series of tedious part-time jobs and unsatisfying relationships before eventually finding her feet and salvaging a fierce independence from her solitude." I feel like maybe that gave too much away. I don't know, obviously not specifics, but that felt like watching the trailer of a film that gives away too much. Anyway, that was the one I also decided to pick up. And as I said, there were a few that called to me. Let me remind myself by looking back on the footage from yesterday. Oh yeah, it was Blowfish. Let me look that up. Oh, it's only got a rating of 3.1. Okay, so Blowfish is by Kyungran Jo and it's translated from the Korean by Chi-Young Kim. For readers of Han Kang and Sheila Heti. Oh, I don't love Sheila Heti's writing. And I have a hit and miss relationship with Hong Kong, to be honest. An atmospheric, melodic, maybe melodic, but it says melancholic, novel about a successful sculptor who decides to die by suicide by artfully preparing and deliberately eating a lethal dish of blowfish. And then the sculptor meets an architect in Seoul and Tokyo, and while the sculptor is learning to prepare a fatal serving of blowfish, the narrative loosely approximates a love story, but this is no romance. For the woman, the man is a pit stop on the road to her own suicide. For the man, the woman forestalls death and offers him a final chance. To be honest, reading more into it, I'm glad I didn't pick that one up. But you know, sometimes books just call to you in the moment. And then the other one was To Rest Our Minds and Bodies by Harriet Armstrong. It says, "What does it mean to be a person? In her final year of university, our narrator is struggling to relate to the world around her and find her place within it. Debut novel from a voice as unique as it is relatable, this novel queries the nature of one's experience, mapping the disintegration of a young woman's sense of self and engagement with the physical world in prose that is keenly observant, delightfully wry, and utterly despairing. An anti-builder's roman for the pandemic generation." I think it was also compared to Moshfegh. I think because it was a staff recommendation, they had like a handwritten card underneath, and I think it said for fans of Moshfegh. And I did read a couple of pages and was quite taken by it. But then I paused and thought, I feel like I've read books like this before, and it would have to be something really special to stand out for me. And I wasn't sure in that moment. So I think I made the correct decisions. Good work past me for getting these. So those are my choices. And that final clip you'll have seen is a building that has opened in the last few years near Foyles, where they're showing, I think that was a computer game, but I don't think you could see the scale of it in the video. It is pretty cool because it goes all the way up and across the ceiling. And the first time I ever came across it, it reminded me quite a lot of Team Lab, which was a brilliant thing that we went to in Tokyo. I think there are kind of knockoff versions of it around the world at the moment. I'll insert some videos here. But when we went in 2018, I think it was fairly new and pretty cool and very immersive. So I always like wandering through to see what they've got going on there. Though I think when it first opened, it was showing something quite ethereal and beautiful, and now it's just a bit trying to sell you stuff, which is less beautiful. Anyway, that was my trip to Foyles yesterday. As I'm filming this, tomorrow the International Booker Prize longlist is announced. So let's check in with each other then, and I can decide if there are any books I might want to check out from this year's longlist. So I'll see you tomorrow for me, 1 second for you. Hi, I have you propped up quite precariously on top of the book trolley, which is in the office, and I'm sitting on the fold-out bed at the moment. This is the futon that we bought last year, because my poor mum, whenever she came to stay, she comes to stay a few times a year, and she was sleeping on a blow-up bed, and she was very polite about it, but I thought it'd be nice to have an actual fold-out something, proper something. So there's a fold-out futon, and it's very comfortable. So I'm just sitting on the end of this right now, and I'm opening up my computer so that we can look at the International Booker Prize long list together. Now, before we talk about that, I just want to say I'm having a terrible reading time at the moment, and I hope that that changes over the course of this video, though I guess negative feelings about books are also, you know, that's something to talk about, but it doesn't make me joyous, so I hope we find something I love soon. I think I'm gonna stop reading the new Nikki French. It's just not hitting the mark. I don't know what's, we'll talk about it in a, you know, not in this segment, but that's not working for me. The new Oinkham Braithwaite, Cursed Daughters, my hold came in at the library. I did not enjoy the beginning of that one, so I've put that on pause for now. If it's on the Women's Prize, I'll come back to it. What was the other one I was reading? There was another one. Oh, I started reading the original by Nell Stevens, and for some reason that wasn't gelling with me either. Maybe I'm in a funk. Maybe this is a me problem. Anyway, let's have a look at the International Booker long list. Also, can you hear those birds outside? Now that I've said that, they've gone quite quiet, but they've been so loud. It's very exciting. Spring is coming. My plan with the International Booker, I think, is just to, if I already own any, read those, because the Women's Prize long list is announced in just over a week, and I will be tackling all of those, so I just don't have time to read this long list as well, but I'm always intrigued by it, and it will encourage me to pick up ones that are already on my shelves, you know, tick some off the old TBR. So, I mean, let's see, I might have none. So this might be a moot point, but let's have a look. Okay, here we go. Long list. So if you're not familiar, the International Booker, because some of you were confused last year thinking I was talking about the Booker Prize. So the Booker Prize is in the summer. That's for English language books. This is for books in translation. It's a £50,000 prize, and half of it is awarded to the author, half is awarded to the translator. That's the basic premise. And I love it. So the long list, okay, here we go. Okay, so we've got Taiwan Travel Log. This, I think, was recommended to me by one of you ages ago, and I checked out the audiobook, but haven't listened to it yet. So maybe I'll listen to this one. I will insert this one here. Oh, next one, I have, it's on my shelf, let me get it. Okay, so this is The Wax Child by Olga Rown, who is one of my faves. The Employees was one of my favorite books several years ago. This is translated normally by Martin Aitken, let's see. Yeah, Martin Aitken from the Danish. This is, I think, about witchery, this one, which is going to be very different to The Employees, which was about space. She also wrote a book on motherhood, which I own but haven't read yet because it's really big. That's why I haven't read it yet. But this one I will read. Maybe, let's see if I can, well, let's see how many I own first in case it's loads, but maybe I can even read them in this video. Then we've got Women Without Men. This says the original language is Persian. It's written by Shanus Passport. It's translated by Faridun Farouk. And it does sound really interesting. It's about 5 different women. We've got a wealthy middle-aged housewife, a sex worker, a school teacher, and others, I guess, because that's just 3, as they arrive by different paths to live together in an abundant garden on the outskirts of Tehran. So this was originally it was published in Persian in 1989. So this is a new translation. I always find it interesting that that happens with this prize. Okay, so I don't own that one, so I'm not going to be reading it in this video, but it has piqued my interest. Then we have got a French book. This one isn't out until April. Okay, so we already have some books that just are not available yet. So this one is published on the 14th of April by Marie and Di. It's called The Witch. I like the hook. It says a mediocre witch in a mediocre marriage tries to pass on her gifts to her twin daughters, who, it becomes apparent, have skills far beyond her own. I mean, I like it. Can't read it though. Next we have an Italian novel called The Duke by Matteo Marcore, which is translated from the Italian by Antonella Lettieri. This one doesn't really appeal to me. On the surface, it says a character study of both its protagonists and of a life in a tiny mountain village governed by nature. The Duke presents a new vision of Italy. Paula Mai's On Earth as It Is Beneath, translated from the Portuguese by Padma Viswanathan, and this is published by Charco Press. On land where enslaved people were once tortured and murdered, the state built a penal colony in the wilderness where inmates could be rehabilitated but never escape. Now, decades later, and having only succeeded in trapping men, not changing them for the better, its operations are winding down. But in the prison's waning days, a new horror is unleashed. Every full moon night, a handful of inmates are set free, the warden is armed with rifles, and the hunt begins. So yes, these are two that I already had, plus I had the audiobook of Taiwan Travel Log. Okay, so that is half of the list. Let's look at the other half. I'm sorry if you can hear the boiler, by the way. The heating is on. It needs to be on. It's cold. The next one is a German novel. We've got The Director, written by Daniel Kellman, translated by Ross Benjamin. An Artist's Life and a Pact with the Devil. This is a novel about the dangerous illusions of the silver screen. So this is about a director who flees Germany in the 1930s when the Nazis come to power, tries to make it in Hollywood, and then later comes back to Germany. I have heard good things about this one. I don't have a copy of it, so I'm not going to be reading it in this video, but I might like to check that one out in the future. Oh, next is a Bulgarian novel, which I don't own, but I've been hearing really good things about. It's called She Who Remains by Reni Karabash, and it's translated by Isadora Angel. It's about a woman who escapes an arranged marriage and then lives her life as a man. That is her escape. Next we have a Swedish book. This is a collection of short stories by E.A. Genberg, and it's called Small Comfort. They were nominated for the prize before for The Details, and this is translated by Kira Josefsson. It says, from an interview with a child star turned thief to the mysterious death of an employee at a drug manufacturer, or the couple feigning marital bliss to keep their inheritance, Aya Genberg carefully unravels the value we place on both money and people. Then we've got The Deserters by Matthias Enard, and it's translated from the French by Charlotte Mandel. This is about a soldier fleeing a nameless war, and then I think it's also about 9/11. I think. I haven't looked into this one too much. Oh, next is a Dutch novel, which I have had my eye on. I don't have a copy of it. Maybe I'll get to it in the future, but this is The Remembered Soldier by Annette Danje, and it's translated from the Dutch by David McKay. And this, I think, is about a soldier in the First World War who's injured and has memory loss. And then women come to his bedside to see if he is a man that they thought they have lost during the First World War. So we get lots of women's stories. And then also someone arrives, I think, saying that they're his wife. But is she telling the truth? Like, what is their reunion like? It does sound very, very intriguing. Next is We Are Green and Trembling by Gabriela Gabedon Gamara. And this is translated from the Spanish by Robin Myers. And this, I know, is about a trans man, and it says it's a queer, baroque, tender and surreal novel that conveys glimmers of hope for the future within the brutal colonial history of Latin America. I really like the premise of this book, but when I read a sample of it, I wasn't sure that it was for me. And this is the last one? Yeah, this is the last one. The Nights Are Quiet in Tehran by Shida Bazia, translated from the German by Ruth Martin. It says set across 4 decades from 1979 to 2009. This is a polyphonic novel of one family's flight from and return to Iran. Okay, so I own 3 of these. 1 in audiobook form and 2 in physical form. So do you think I should challenge myself to read these in this video? Let's set out to do that. Let's set that out as our goal, and see how we get on, because I do like a challenge, and this seems like quite a manageable challenge. Okay, so that's where I'm going to go, and hopefully this will help to boost my reading, because as I said, I haven't been finding stuff that I've been really, really loving recently. So let me tackle some of these books and I'll come back to you and tell you how I'm getting on. Hi, happy Mother's Day. That's if you're in the UK. If you're elsewhere and it's not Mother's Day where you are, I apologise if I just gave you a jump scare. But right now, as I'm filming and the day that hopefully this is being uploaded, it is Mother's Day in the UK. And yeah, sending lots of love to anyone who finds this day difficult for whatever reason. Because it's a Sunday, you might be able to hear someone mowing their lawn. I hope that's kind of atmospheric and cosy, but well, I have to film right now because it's nap time. So we're filming now. It is 2 weeks since I filmed the last clip. And yeah, I wanted to come in here and wrap up this video now. I've actually already filmed this clip and I just word vomited far too much. So I'm going to try and word vomit a little bit here, but in a slightly more condensed fashion. Let's see if I can do that. So I think this video is going to be called something like "This Year I Have Failed at Reading," which sounds very dramatic. And I don't mean it to sound dramatic, it's more concise than what I actually mean, which is this year I have failed at finding things with regard to books that work for me. Like, that's kind of what I mean. I don't think you can really fail at reading. It's not, you know, a sport. It's just, I would love to have found more things that I have loved so far this year, and I have definitely failed at that. And because I have read so many things and I've tried so many things that have worked for me in the past, so for instance, reading most anticipated releases that I'm excited about, or reading work from authors whose work I've already loved before, I've done all of that. I've also done more structured reading, as in trying to read from prizes, which often works for me too. And none of it has particularly worked. I am about to dive into, or actually I'm already in the midst of, but you haven't seen that yet. I am in the middle of reading the Women's Prize for Fiction longlist. That is working for me more. So that is a relief. So please do know that good things are coming in the future. There are books that I have really loved in that list, and hopefully there will be more because I'm only about halfway through. So that will be my next video. But up until this point, what of March? The 15th, so the middle of March, I have read, let's look at my story graph, okay, let's look at this together. I have read, hold please, I've read 12 books. I've read 12 books, and out of those books, I have questionable thoughts about many of them, and then I've also had a lot of DNFs. So since we spoke last time, I said I was going to read the 3 books in the International Book Prize longlist that I had on my shelves. I'm still reading Taiwan Travelogue and I am enjoying it, but it's not pulling me in. I keep forgetting that I'm reading it, which is not a good sign. It is a queer historical novel. I love the discussions on food. I'm liking it, but that's it. It's kind of a solid, it's okay, which is not really how I want to feel about the books that I'm reading. Given I don't have loads of time to read, I want to be reading banger after banger, and I know that that is not always possible, but frankly I think it's more possible than what I've been doing in recent times, so I might go back to that one. It's on pause for now. Then I attempted these 2 and I DNF'd both of them. So for The Wax Child by Olga Raum, I so admire her as an author because she's one of those authors who can manage to make every book of theirs feel so different that you think, wait, is this the same person who's written this? But because of that, it means that if maybe you loved a particular style of one of her books, that won't always transpose into her other stuff. So whilst I love The Employees, I love that so much, is it here on my shelf? Then I don't have to insert something in the edit. Can I find it? Yes, here we are. Okay, so this is The Employees. It's a sci-fi novel about people discovering something in space and they're unsure what it is, and it means that they question their humanity. It kind of, to me, is a book about IVF. It's fragmented and ethereal, and I thought it was gorgeous. This, The Wax Child, is set in the 1600s. The voice in it feels very measured and of that time, and for some reason that isn't working for me. I think I'd kind of hoped that because I knew it was going to be historical fiction, I had hoped it would be more like Amina Kane's book Indelicacy, which is a historical novel but feels very postmodern. I don't know, I can't pinpoint exactly what is not working for me, but the voice in here doesn't feel familiar as I had hoped. And then this one, On Earth as It Is Beneath, I am also just finding quite stilted and have been very frustrated by. Because so many books have not been working for me, obviously I'm going to hold my hands up and say it's not just the books, it's got to be a bit of me. It's got to be a bit of me. And I think that because I have less time to read, even less time than I did last year, I have less patience with a book that I'm not enjoying. Obviously, if I'm having to read them for work, I plough through regardless, and that's fine. But if it's reading for pleasure and I'm not enjoying something, I will still give it a good go and a fair shout, but I will not push through because time is too short. Time is too short, life is too short, time is valuable. It's just, I'm not gonna get to my deathbed, hopefully in old age, and look back and go, oh my God, I wish I hadn't DNF'd all those books. Like, that's just not gonna happen. So I'm fine with that decision. But the point is, I want to be finding books that I love. That is what I want. And as I said, I am filming the Women's Prize reading vlog at the moment, and that is working for me, and that is fine. But I would love to know how your reading year is going. Is it going better than mine? How are you feeling about everything? I think I just have to let go of this and just be like, it is what it is. It is but a moment, and it's a bit of a reading slump. It doesn't matter. Everything else is absolutely fine and great, actually. So I'd rather it was that way round than my reading was great and my life wasn't going so well. Since I have last spoken to you, it has been little one's 2nd birthday, which feels absolutely wild to me, even though it feels like she has existed for forever. So it doesn't particularly make sense. I don't share like things on here about her really, but this one I thought I would share because I got 2 things. Okay, so the other day she picked up a copy of Franklin and Luna Go to the Moon and asked me to read it. I hadn't really read the Franklin books to her before. I think I read one of them to her when she was teeny tiny, and I mean teeny, so she wasn't going to have an opinion. Slightly terrifying to read your own book to a child who has no filters and is going to tell you whether or not they enjoy it. She really loved it, and I tried to explain to her that I had written it, but I don't think she really has a concept of people writing the books. The books just exist to her, because of course they do. So I said that I had written it, and she just looked at me and said, silly mummy, and I just thought that was really cute and funny. And then the other day she was looking at a scab on her knee because she got a first ever grazed knee. She's done quite well to not have one until now, and she told me that it was rough like tree bark, and I was like, I would like to frame that. I don't know if it's just because I'm her mum and I'm very biased, but I just love that. I was like, I'm going to store that later, maybe put it in a poem somewhere. Thank you so much. Very poetic. So yeah, since I've last filmed, we have been to Kew Gardens together. I took her to Kew Gardens for the day. Can you imagine walking around with daffodils up to your chest? She was amazed, as you would be if you were little and there were daffodils up to your chest. We've been to the Tate Modern. We've been to visit Sana in St Albans. We have been to Hampstead Heath to feed the ducks. We have been, where else have we been? We went to the Welcome Collection a couple of days ago. They've got a couple of exhibits on at the moment, one on deafness and then also one on IVF and motherhood. And it was so overwhelming to walk around and exhibit, I can't even speak, an exhibit on IVF and motherhood with my 2-year-old and watch her looking at like the paintings. Like there was a medieval painting on post-birth community and she was marveling at it. And yeah, the Welcome is where I wrote some of the first poems in Please Do Not Touch This exhibit. And if you've been around, you know I went through years of IVF. So being there with her was pretty special. And when you are a parent, obviously you reflect on your own childhood. And without oversharing too much here though, like it's, 2016 or something. Watching my child grow up and see all the little things that she absorbs on a daily basis and how they alter her being, the things she talks about the most, the things that emotionally impact her the most, the things she refers back to again and again. It's always surprising what those things are. Sometimes I can guess at the end of the day what she's going to say her favourite thing has been, and sometimes it's something that really takes me by surprise. But I was just thinking, when I was her age, I had already had like 12 major operations and spent so much time in hospital, and I know that in my body and have obviously tried to process that as much as possible, as much as you can as an adult. But having a child and realizing what that would be for a child from the outside looking in is making me cherish this time all the more and making me want to fill her days with all of the joyous things and have the most wonderful time with her as possible before, she starts nursery and then school. And I have just edited that clip and realised that I did not phrase that well, because it sounds like I'm saying that I'm watching her go through the same thing. That's not what I'm saying. She's not going through any of that. I'm just saying having a child makes you think about your own childhood, and I'm reflecting on what I went through and want to make her childhood as lovely as possible. That's essentially it. Anyway, I have lots of things I could say. Essentially is what I'm saying. And I am making space for all of that. and I think that's probably impacting my reading. That's kind of what I wanted to say. I am so in that time with her and don't regret that for 1 second. But I do think it means that when I sit down with a cup of tea and pick up a book, if I don't love it immediately, I don't have lots of time to be faffing around with it. So apologies to the books that maybe I have not spent as much time with as I would have done before having a child, but also that is just life. And I'm all for, you know, moving on and finding new things that we love, and hopefully there'll be more of that in the future. If you're curious, as I said, I'm reading The Women's Prize. The correspondence so far is my favourite. That is a spoiler for a future video. And I also said I was going to read this Jack Underwood book, and I have read this and I really, really enjoyed it. Obviously, as with many poetry collections, there were some poems in here that I love more than others, but I feel like this collection really captures what it's like to try and be a parent and be present and be kind and teach them about the world when the world is on fire. And the paradox of that. It feels like a paradox a lot of the time, or just two juxtaposing things, two things that are just not going to work well together. Even though I believe that nurturing and kindness and community, which is what I'm really trying to engage with at the moment, is a solution to the future. Little things, building blocks and community, and that all kind of wrapped up in bigger political movement. Was that even a thought? I feel like it was some kind of thought that I just had there, but let me read you a bit of one of the poems so you can see what I mean. I made a banner for the protests to come, depicting the planting of milk teeth, the unfolding of a noose, a stadium left empty. Autumn was just my luck. I could not stomach the broth I boiled, and I slept badly. Arguments I won in my head lost direction when formed out loud. The riots continued, but quietly now, indoors. It was a time for manifestos, though the wrongs were too many for anything less than a lake. Friends kept the counsel of friends. In the yellow light of the barn, we tried to write sentences each other would like or not desire to alter. Together we designed a quilt depicting the wolf taking scent, water moving quickly, the sign of the errant cloud, an alphabet, a baby resisting sleep, a worm eating its opposite head, only this time surrounded by snow, which hasn't stopped falling since Thursday, the name we gave to our child. If you are looking for a book that is about parenting, but also is not about parenting, it's more about, as I said, looking to the future when things feel very bleak and on fire, then I would very much recommend Jack Underwood's A Year in the New Life. So there we go. I did find a book that I loved. So let us celebrate that. Hooray. This vlog has probably been very itty-bitty. In fact, I know it's been very itty-bitty, so apologies for that. But I also hope that in that respect, it's felt very true to life. Was there anything else I wanted to say before I disappeared? Oh yes, there was. I will talk about this more in a future vlog because I realise this is the end and many of you may have already disappeared, which is fair enough. But at the British Library this month they have a fairy tales exhibition opening. I will insert the poster here. It's been very exciting to see this poster on tubes, on tube stations. A fairy tale exhibition, and my book, The Sister Who Ate Her Brothers, nearly said the title of a different book there, The Sister Who Ate Her Brothers, which is a collection of 12 fairy tales from around the world that I have rewritten with positive queer representation and disability representation, illustrated by Adam D'Souza. That is part of the exhibit. I haven't seen the exhibit, so I will try and take you along to the exhibit. How many times can I say exhibit? When I go. Which will be sometime maybe in the next month. So I will film a bit of that when I go, and we can talk about it more then. It's a very small bit of the exhibit. There'll be lots of other things going on, but I'm excited to be part of it. And if you happen to be in London and you're into fairy tales, go check it out. Okay, so if you like this video, even though maybe I didn't talk about books as much as I normally do, and you would like to subscribe, that would be lovely. And if you enjoy my content and you would like to consider supporting me on Patreon, that'd be very kind. Link is in the description down below. I would love to know what you're reading. And I'm sending lots of love to you all, and I will see you in the not too distant future for a Women's Prize longlist reading vlog.